The USS Tinosa was a submarine during World War II that served many war patrols in the Pacific Front. Its job was to map mines for a possible invasion of Okinawa if it had not been for the atomic bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. My grandfather, George Donald Wessner, was a sailor and served on the Tinosa. Mostly he was called by his middle name Donald, or even Don, but he was sometimes referred to as George. During war patrols, he worked in the rear of the submarine, firing torpedoes. The USS Tinosa was named for a poisonous black tropical fish. The submarine division of the Navy was the most dangerous, with a 22% rate of being sunk at sea. The way the Tinosa was to map minefields was using a new, top-secret piece of technology called the FM sonar mine detector. The sonar was being tried out for the first time to map mines, and the USS Tinosa was to be the first sub to use it. My grandfather enlisted into the Navy before the United States was a part of World War II. On December 7, 1941, the Japanese Air Force bombed Pearl Harbor, a Hawaiian Navy post. Luckily, my grandfather Donald was not there during the bombing. The United States had been trying to stay out of the war, the majority of the war being in Europe, Africa, and Japan. After the bombing, the United States had to respond and sent forces to Europe and Japan to aid the Allies, a group of countries fighting the other oppressing group, the Axis. The Axis was made up of 3 countries: Germany, Japan, and Italy. When the war started, the USS Tinosa got the job to map mines. If it was found necessary, the US would need to invade Okinawa to get to Japan. Until they knew where the minefields were, they wouldn't be able to get to Okinawa. That's where the Tinosa and the sonar mine detector come in. Because so many people found this mission a suicide mission, the men enlisted in the Tinosa were privileged to switch to the USS Shark. My grandfather decided to stay with the Tinosa and go ahead with its job of mapping mines. The USS Tinosa made many war patrols, each time going farther into the coast of Japan mapping the minefields. Submarines had many threats that they had to avoid during the course of wars. Not only did they have to navigate safely through the oceans, they also had to avoid depth charges, mines, and enemy ships. After the mapping of the minefields, the Tinosa went home to Pearl Harbor and celebrated completing all of its war patrols. Weirdly enough, the alternate ship that the sailors from the Tinosa could switch to, the USS Shark, was sunk. Ironically, all the sailors that switched to the USS Shark because of the deadly Tinosa mission died, yet all the people that stayed at the Tinosa survived the mission. After the end of the war, Don Wessner married a nurse in the war named Anne. Through the 1940s and the 1950s, they had 6 children, one of which being my father, Gerald Wessner. They stayed married until Anne's death in the late 1970s. In the 1980s, the information on the FM sonar mine detector was released to the public, and anyone was allowed to view it. My family read all the information on it and was astounded to learn that the sonar never actually functioned correctly as planned. The most shocking thing was that even though the crew of the USS Tinosa thought that it was working, they somehow managed to make 12 war patrols in World War II around minefields and lived to tell the tale. It seemed that it was luck that managed to bring the Tinosa home. Throughout World War II, the Tinosa is credited with sinking 16 enemy ships, overall totaling 64,655 tons.